At Joomla Day Australia 2019, I gave a presentation on how TinyMCE 5 helps deliver the best content authoring experience. And as a picture says 1,000 words, I just wanted to show you some of my favourite Tiny features and how they can help content authors day to day. The first one's really simple. It's a plugin that comes with Tiny 5 called Auto Resize. Basically, what this will do is resize our content editor as we go. Otherwise, we would have this fixed height container, and as we add lots of content, the author is going to need to scroll within that content to find what they're looking for. Auto Resize fixes this by changing the height of our container as we go. So let's just add some new content. And every time we add a new line, the content area gets bigger. This means that we can actually avoid having any vertical scroll bars. By resizing the content area, the author is then able to stay focused on writing their content rather than worrying about whereabouts within this small little window they happen to be. This is just such a simple little thing that I think can really dramatically improve the experience for an author. So quite often when we get content from a client, it comes in a Word document, which is totally fine. But when we copy the content into a text editor, often a lot of the wordisms will come along with it. So a lot of words hidden markup that controls the styling in Word gets pasted into our HTML, and that's going to really pollute our HTML, especially when we want to display that on the web using a style sheet. PowerPaste is a premium plugin that Tiny offer that helps clean up any Word content as we go. So if we just flick across to a Word document, we've just got some word styles, our heading, we've even got a link in there as well. Let's just copy that, flick back, and we're just going to paste that into place. What we want to do is we can keep formatting, which will keep all of the wordisms in place, or we can remove it, and that's what I want to do here. So we're going to remove formatting. As you can see now, we have clean content to look at. Our heading is actually marked up as a heading, and we have our link too. And if we look at our source code, you can see exactly how clean that is. There are no inline styles, so when we put a style sheet with our HTML content, it will actually display as we want it to display. So that just makes it really, really easy too. But the other thing when we get content from a client is that they often don't understand the difference between presentation and the actual content. So they'll write headings in all caps because that's how they want it to appear. But we can actually do that using styles. So we have this all caps heading here, and if we just check out the source code, you can see it is all in caps. But using the change case plugin, we can actually select that and make it go to title case. And without having to retype that heading, so that way I'm not responsible for putting any typos in place, I've been able to remove all of those upper caps, because remember, upper caps is yelling on the web, uppercase, and now we've made it into a beautiful title case just by clicking a couple of buttons. So again, something that's going to make it a hell of a lot easier for content authors. And given so many content authors are coming from a word processing background, they are expecting to have a spell check available, and luckily TinyMCE 5 does give us some options. Out of the box, you can use the browser spell check, which will use whatever browser you're using to help provide spelling typos as you go. There is also a premium offering if you do have the premium plugins available, but if you are technically minded, you can also create and host your own spell checking engine, which is what we're demoing here. So if we just create categorize in Australian English and categorize in American English. Great example here with a lot of S's and Z's being replaced here. We're actually using pspell here to show the correct spelling. So if we just go for our spell check, because we have it configured for Australian English, the Z version is actually being highlighted as an error, and if we right click, we can see some suggestions. So that's coming from our endpoints that we've configured for our spell check. If we were to change to American English and spell check again, you can see that the S version has now been marked as incorrect. So if you're writing content, or if you have authors writing content that require specific spellings of English words, such as those in America with a Z or those with British English with an S, you can actually get your spell checking engine to be configured for the languages that your content authors are writing in. So the next thing is the accessibility checker, which is fantastic. I spent quite a bit of time working with assistive technologies. This is going back to uni days, and ensuring that anything that gets delivered for the web is actually accessible for everyone, regardless of whether they're using an assistive device or whether they need to increase font sizes or whatever it happens to be. So if we actually go to insert an image, so we'll just quickly browse to find an image. We'll plug that one in place. We'll make it a little bit smaller than that too. We've got our image in place. We haven't added an alt attribute, but of course a screen reader won't know what that image is. We need to give it one. Trying to explain that to a content author can be a little bit confusing because they may not understand how assistive devices work and why these assistive tools need to be in place. The accessibility checker is a single click option and very similar to spell checking in Word, will come up and give us any of the issues that it's found, and in a lot of cases actually give us the ability to make changes without doing anything extra. So we're being told here images must have an alternative text description. Awesome, I can actually do that right now. So this is Port Wollonga sunrise, and we can repair it. No other issues detected, and if we just go back to view our code, you can see that our alt attribute has been added. Now, just while we are here in the code, there is also a code editor plugin that comes with TinyMCE 5. There is a free plugin which gives you source code access, which is awesome. And then there is also this premium offering, which does add color coding. So if you are doing a little bit more with your code editor, the color coding is fantastic and a lot easier to read. And it's great for when you do need to tinker with those attributes and have a little bit more control. And just also on that note, check out the documentation where you can specify which HTML tags and attributes you want to allow or disallow within your editor too. So that's really important to have a look at if you are trying to restrict what your users can do. And that comes with the core Tiny install. So definitely worth checking that out too. Okay, so let's move on to having a look at how we can actually customize TinyMCE 5 to suit our content authors. So we're just going to flick to a simple demo. Let's say, for example, that our authors don't actually need to do a hell of a lot with our content. They might need to make something bold, they might need to change our indenting, and of course, accessibility checking as well. We've actually just got a very simple toolbar that gives the user the ability to do just what they need to do. There's no point trying to confuse people with too many buttons when they actually don't need it. We have the ability to fully customize all of the toolbars, all of the menu items to suit what our authors need. So if our authors don't need to see things, well, we can remove them. And if they do need a lot of control, we can actually add them in. And we can use these different toolbars in different locations to provide a different experience. So we're just going to flick across to an inline editing mode. So this is a great way to actually give the author a true what you see is what you get editing experience. So as far as this looks, it just looks like a web page. But when we actually go into one of our text areas, you can see that we have some tools available to us. And we can actually just type our content in place, and we can see exactly how it's going to appear, which makes it fantastic for authors who are not particularly technically minded and do really want to see things in place. But as you can see, we do have a few more tools here than we did in our simple example. If we go up to our heading, because our heading already has a style, we don't want people to be able to insert a table in the middle of our heading tag, so we've customized the toolbar so it's only undo and redo. So it's this level of customization that really makes it easy for us to give the author the controls that they need and remove the ones that they don't need so that they can stay focused on writing their content rather than trying to find the right button for what they need. So this is actually showing off two things here. Inline editing is fantastic for a really true what you see is what you get editing experience, but also showing different toolbar customizations for different editors so that you are giving your authors the tools that they need when they need them. So if we just flick across to our custom config example, so not only can we customize the toolbars and the menus and the way that the editor looks, we can also customize a lot of behind the scenes things too. So we've already had a look at languages for our spell checker, but we can also define the block elements that we want. So for example, our paragraph, our header, header 2, header 3. And as you can see here, well, this one's blue and this one's a dark gray, but in all caps. This is actually coming from an external style sheet as well. So we can tell Tiny to read a style sheet so that the content that is in the editor looks like what the author is expecting. But it means we can also limit what they can select so that they're not starting to pollute the markup with additional markup or additional styles or wrappers that may impact our actual front-end styling. One step further is if you've got a really strict brand guide, you can even edit the colors so that it's only your branded colors in place. So that way authors are able to only work within the bounds that you want to give them. As we go through, we can also use these styles to our advantage. So let's say we want to create a new link and we want to make that look like a button. Well, okay, we've got our link, so we can easily do this. So let's just do contactus.html. We also have this beautiful thing within our link class list where we can specify a specific class. And we've got a class here called button. That's now going to create our anchor and also give it a class of button. If we just check out our markup, our anchor, class button, and the link that we've entered, the author hasn't needed to know that the class is called button. We don't need to tell the author to go and view the source code and add the class attribute. They can just select it from a list and it now looks like a button, exactly like we want it to appear. Again, it's all about making the content authoring experience easier, especially for people who aren't technically minded, so that the author doesn't need to know anything about the HTML side of things as they go. And TinyMCE 5 makes it really easy for us to do this. So one last thing I do want to show today is TinyDrive. So we've already seen it before when I inserted that image. So if we just go to browse for a file, TinyDrive is available when you use a key with Tiny and use the cloud version of Tiny. And these are actually stored up in the cloud, and Tiny give all users some bandwidth and storage space to get you started. And if you go down the premium plan, those bandwidth limits do increase. So it makes it really easy for any author to be able to browse for files, and you can also do some basic image editing too. It's great because you can then upload as you go, and it's got a really great user interface that fits in with the rest of Tiny so that it's a cohesive experience. But what gets me really excited about TinyDrive is how they're extending it. So TinyDrive fits in beautifully within the editor, but it also now fits in standalone outside the editor. On this particular screen, we don't have any editor instances, but we can actually still browse our TinyDrive just from our usual form elements. So this way we can start to centralize where our files are going to be stored and select them from different parts of our application. And we can also then upload them into TinyDrive. So if we just select our new image and we can upload that as we go, this will now pop that in TinyDrive for us. So just while we wait, Tiny are actually working now on giving us the ability to have our own backend. So if you have a client who doesn't want to use cloud storage for whatever reason and needs to store things on their own server, hopefully we should see this soon where we can implement our own backend. Anyway, let's just go and have a look, and we can see that we have our new image that we just uploaded. And we can select our image, and it has now popped that into our form field for us. So Tiny now have this fantastic plugin for the editor to select images, and they're now giving developers the ability to use this same interface in other parts of their application without the editor being instantiated as well. And I think this is really, really cool. So if you've looked at some of the other articles on my blog, you'll see that I do like writing a lot of plugins for Tiny. I've been doing this for years, and Tiny 5 does make it really easy. So go and check out some of those other blog posts about how to write your own plugins using the user interface components and the library that Tiny have given us. It's surprisingly easy and a lot easier than you think, but it also helps you deliver a better experience for your content authors as well. So if you do have any questions about how I've been using Tiny, how you might want to use it for yourself, please reach out, say hi. I hope you found this useful. I hope you can see some of these features that may be hidden within the documentation for Tiny can actually really help improve the authoring experience for your clients.